Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Off the Cuff. Now, this week I was running low on some things to talk about, but I did spot something I wanted to talk about last week, which I thought I'd bring up. This week, which was there was this whole thing going on around about Blackface. Sargon did a video on this. You might have seen it. Basically, it involved someone wrote an article where they went into a pub, really, and they saw these photographs of men covered in soot. Sorry, it wasn't really a pub. It was it was a pub, and this person here, Rashad Thomas, thought this might look like a photo of coal miners, but I see offensive blackface. That's the title of the story, and then just a couple of days later, I saw another story go up, which I didn't see anyone cover. I just saw it posted, and that was an academic, U.S. academic guy. I'll get his name in a moment. He accused Mary Poppins of blackface, of racism. The U.S. professor named Daniel Pollock Pelsner. Now, I've seen some people theorize that the reason that he was bringing up this whole Mary Poppins thing was actually to bring some attention to his new book, which, that's possible. Infamy works just as well sometimes. And so, I just find this so interesting. I say interesting, I find it quite ridiculously stupid. Because, yes, blackface was something people did, and there was a difference between that, obviously. I do not think that the coal miners heading down to potentially die or just to live so badly in those working conditions, I don't think that they were entitled in any way. I don't think that the black lung they got was entitled. And the same goes for Mary Poppins. Now, you can say whatever you want about Mary Poppins, but the whole idea, it even says in this article, the whole idea of Mary Poppins being covered in soot has nothing to do with blackface, obviously. And then she wipes it clean and all that, and that was all about, not because she's cleaning up because she wants to be all white, it's because she wants to be clean. Because all throughout the film, Mary Poppins is constantly trying to behave properly, while the Dick Van Dyke character, whose name escapes me, but he's acting all silly the whole film. So obviously there is that difference there, and I just find it so interesting the way that people will project their political opinion, project their even racist viewpoints and racist worldview onto just about anything. And it's honestly, it does get so laughable, and I mainly want to bring this up just so if you're listening to this, you can at least be aware of these stories. I'll put links in the description to these, and I just found it so interesting because you got people who lived in these tough working conditions. This is just to go into the coal mine. This one, you got people who work in these tough working conditions, and they were working there because it was like the best. It was the main job to work. And that they're not really living the high life. They're not really enjoying themselves. They're working to put food on the table. And this opinion contributor journalist twat has come along, projecting his own political viewpoint onto this, saying, yeah, they were clearly discriminating. I'm sure they would quite happily have swapped places with someone else. And yeah, how entitled do you have to be to feel that criticizing working class men who were just providing for their families, working in horrible conditions. How privileged do you have to be, and how blind do you have to be to criticize such men? Honestly, it's disgusting. It's disgusting that people feel that that's right. Now, I'll make all my sorts of arguments. I'm not going to say it's offensive or they shouldn't say it. I just find it crazy because it's one thing to criticize people now, but to go back on history like that, willfully ignore the obvious facts of history and be like, oh yeah, I know, I have my own unique perspective on history. I know the real facts here. It's like, no, you don't. And you're a bloody idiot. Now, another little thing I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure what everyone's opinions on this will be. I've got my own opinions, but I quite like listening to Candace Owens. I find her to be very difficult. She's slow to kind of accept when she makes a mistake, and she's very confrontational and argumentative, and it can get just stubborn. It can get ridiculous, which can be good. It can be really good. But I've been reading over the whole thing that happened between with Candace Owens and when she was creating forget what it's called now. When she was creating her website to prevent people from anonymously posting, to have real information, public information, well, not public information, private information posted so people can hide behind anonymity. Now, personally, I'll say, okay, I can see where she's trying to get to, what she's trying to do, but it's very clearly wrong. But I don't think that Candace Owens meant to do that she realized the consequences of her actions, what they could be. And the unfortunate thing is that she first ran into some SJW idiots. And what happened was that as more people became aware of her project, a lot of reasonable people started attacking and started criticizing her project. And the problem was that Candace Owens was so stubborn she didn't see that. She didn't see that there were some reasonable criticisms. But here's the thing, is eventually she shut the project down. Candace Owens shut it down. For whatever reason, maybe she realized that it was wrong. I don't know. Maybe she doesn't want to admit that publicly. I don't know. But I was watching this discussion recently between Sargon of Akkad and Tree of Life. And I found Tree of Life's whole rant, whole opinion on Candace Owens to be quite ridiculous, frankly. So one thing she says is that she stopped Candace herself. But then obviously later on said that Candace Owens stopped the project. Now I know Tree of Life might have contributed by rallying up some people to stop Candace, but in the end Candace Owens was the one who stopped it herself. Doesn't look like the people that Tree of Life rallied were people that Candace Owens would listen to. And the other thing is that she seems to take the whole thing seriously, to take it personally, when it was very obvious that Candace Owens had a very broad idea of what the project goals were. She wasn't trying to target anyone specifically. And in the end, because Tree of Life's details were put on this platform, so Tree of Life is taking it personally because she was actually at risk because of Candace's project, but not because of Candace. Because Tree of Life's cousin, I believe it was, posted her details on Candace Owens' project. I need to get the name. It was Social Autopsy. That was it. Social Autopsy. And Tree of Life's cousin basically put her personal details on the Social Autopsy database. So her cousin is at fault. Candace created the medium, but her cousin could have gone anywhere and posted those details. To blame Candace is like blaming Facebook and YouTube for the content that people post on it. Just because they create the medium doesn't make them responsible. And another thing that just really annoys me, and that's like I said earlier, I believe that Candace had the right goals based on what she said. Tree of Life does a lot of ascribing motive. She does so much of just saying, "Oh, this is why Candace was doing it. She was doing it to get at these people. Yeah, she knew what she was doing." And I don't think she did, but I have no proof, and neither does Tree of Life. And it really, really pisses me off that she's stating it as if it's a fact. I'll say I think Candace was being naive, but I have no way of knowing that. And I found this whole point I found it quite ridiculous because, I mean, I've seen Tree of Life's videos. She's kind of on the right side of the aisle as far as I'm concerned, on the right side of the viewpoints, you being a lot of anti-feminist and all sorts, but she seems to have taken a grudge towards Candace Owens. And if you watch the video between her and Sargon of Akkad, you can actually start to see why she has such a grudge. And I personally, I'm going to ascribe a motive, okay? Because I'm looking at something that Tree of Life said. And if you watch the video, I'll find the time code, I'll maybe put it in the description. But basically, there's a point at which Tree of Life says that she was there first. That Candace Owens came along and she rallied all these people up and she was going to help the black community. But Tree of Life is saying how she was trying to help the black community first. And this is a common thing. It's a personality trait I've seen in a lot of people. I have it a lot. But there's this thing where when you feel like you were there first, you feel like the person has slighted you. You can always see that the easiest way to see that is when you look at music fans. When music fans have a band that they've known for a long time and then the band gets famous and everyone suddenly is like, "Oh, I'm so angry at all these newbies, all these new fans who just like don't even know the real music and all that." It's like, yeah, but just be happy for the music. Be happy for the band, and Tree of Life should just be happy that Candace Owens is another voice pushing in the right direction. Even if she has a problem with something that Candace Owens did previously, Candace Owens stopped it. It's like that joke that people say about Hitler, where they say, "After all, Hitler's not so bad. After all, he killed Hitler." Candace Owens isn't so bad because after all, she stopped her project. Now, moving on, there's an article I came across a while ago. It was about the Isle of Man has this education bill that they're bringing in, and honestly, it's quite alarming. Now, it's mainly focused on home education, but frankly, it's very dangerous. So in the Isle of Man, home educating families already have to register, which is something we don't have in the rest of the UK, thankfully, because parents. It's ultimately, I have the view that it is the parents' responsibility first to raise a child, and it is the government's responsibility second. There's this recent change that's been going on where the government kind of admonishes parents for not raising their children properly, like the government has a better view. But just think about this: if someone says to you, "Do you think the school system is good?" What's the typical response? What do you think the response would be? Because most of the people I know, most people I've spoken to said, "I learned nothing at school. School's awful." So why on earth would parents feel that the government has any moral authority, let's say, to be able to tell them how to educate their kids, how to raise their kids? Last we saw, the government's doing a pretty awful job. So I would not expect them to be able to know how to raise the kids better than their parents will know how to raise their individual children. Yes, there are neglectful parents, there are abusive parents, but those are very particular cases. And I wouldn't go. A lot of these new acts that they bring in are often suspecting the families first, which kind of does away with the whole innocent until proven guilty. Now, this whole education bill that they're bringing in, the education department, they want to be able to assess the child's work and interview. It's just a slight change in the wording of the Education Act. And it's basically changing it so that the government can be more suspicious. The government can have more let's just say a lower threshold. So the one thing they're changing is that they've changed the maximum penalty. It used to be £1,000. It's changed to £10,000 or a 6-month prison sentence. In addition, parents have to agree to allow the department to interview the child or the parent if they if they suspect that the child isn't receiving a proper education, essentially. Whatever suitable education might be regarded as. I've seen some really wild education curriculums, even no curriculums for some really intelligent children. Now, basically the maximum there then is that if a parent refused to allow their child to be interviewed by a random government stranger employee person, that parent could find themselves in jail for 6 months, which is quite bloody horrifying. Because, ultimately, it's not the government's job to raise children. It is not. And it shouldn't be, because they're doing a pretty damn bad job of it. In general, anyway. I am biased, of course. I was raised home educated, so my bias is showing, I know, but I have good reason. And I think the evidence, I'd actually like to get the statistics together, because I do think that there could be something there, we could see what the typical results are for home education versus public educated or private educated kids when they reach adult age. Who has the most success generally? It's worth looking into. Now, another thing that's going on, I saw a story posted. It was a ton of mothers were in shock as their daughters came home from college with mustaches, and breasts removed, because their daughters had decided to go through gender reassignment or surgery or whatever you want to call it, just while they were at university. They'd gone to university, full-fledged girls who are, quite happy with who they are, or maybe some were depressed sometimes. There's multiple stories here, so I won't go over all of them. But it really gets me thinking about the whole idea of gender dysphoria, which is really seeming to be behind a lot of this. You've got a lot of people who believe that they're not in the right body. And the problem is that most of the time they're thinking that because they don't fit the stereotype, which is crazy, because, we're not supposed to stereotype people. And then you've got people stereotyping themselves, thinking that there's some people who think that, I must be a man because, I've never really been interested in any girl-like things. And I've seen stories where people have said that. But that's not what makes a girl. That's not what makes a guy. A guy is you don't have to be into all sorts of sports. I absolutely hate sports. I find them stupid. I enjoy playing them sometimes, but that's about it. Watching sports, I find boring. But that's what's anecdotal evidence. But nevertheless, a stereotype is not fitting a stereotype is not evidence that you are not who you should be. But a lot of these cases where people have wanted to get their gender changed and go through the surgery and have the hormone changes, a lot of the time it ends up just being homosexuality. But it gets misidentified by them. And honestly, it's got to be some form of abuse, doesn't it? To just allow teenagers, young people, to make these decisions that will affect them for the rest of their lives. I mean, I know the same goes for kids who go off to war. They're making decisions that will massively negatively affect them. And they could end up with PTSD and all sorts. And I would say yes. And I would hope that people joining the army go through a rigorous process before they get allowed in. I expect they should be. But should the same not apply to kids who want to go change their gender for the rest of their lives? It's a horrible thing to do. And I don't think the government should just be so quick to advocate for it. I feel kind of bad for some of these kids, honestly, because, you're not sure about who you are. You're uncertain about it. You feel like you're not comfortable. You feel unhappy with yourself. You feel like you need to make a change. But how many times... I cannot, if I'm going anecdotal again, I cannot count the amount of times I've had a problem and I thought, this is not right, I need to change this. And I've come up with something, I'm like, that's got to be it. That's the fix. That's what we'll sort out. And I've gone and I've tried to make that change and nothing changes. Because sometimes you just have to, a lot of the time anyway, some of these problems might be in your head. And I'm not trying to patronize anyone. I'm not trying to tell you who you should be or who you shouldn't be, or that I know where you're going, what you're going through, or whatever. But I'm just saying, these kind of things, they have a massive permanent effect, and you can't go back. And I think that the government and the officials and everyone really shouldn't make such hasty decisions. I mean, hell, the government's taken 2 years to negotiate a Brexit, but they're happy to allow people to change their lives permanently at their whim. I don't know, I think it's dangerous, and I worry. I worry for the people whose lives will be affected by this. I've got just 2 more things to bring up before I wrap up here. Now the first one is something I've not heard. I've seen quite a few people talk about him before, and that is Trevor Noah. Now I knew about Trevor Noah before he joined the Daily Show. Being a South African comedian, I would. And let's just say I was happy. I was so excited when I heard that he was going to be hosting the Daily Show. I thought, wow, he's managed to make a shift. And now what you see is he parrots the same politics. The same stupid politics that all the late night show hosts parrot. And honestly, it doesn't sound like him, if I'm honest. I mean, in South Africa, he was very anti the main government there as well. Like he is currently anti-Trump, he was anti-Zuma, anti-Malema. And, that's fair. Frankly, I felt like his criticisms were correct, but I am biased in that. But I do want to, if you've heard of Trevor Noah, if you've seen Trevor Noah and you're thinking he's one of the stupid lefty, whatever, late night show hosts, consider this, right? Okay, you're a South African comedian, you're trying to break out into the big stage. This opportunity gets thrown at you to host a huge show in the United States. To take over the likes of, was it Jon Stewart that he took over from? I've got that head name in my head, but I'm not sure if it was him. And, yeah, I think it was Jon Stewart. And you take over from this guy, you're in a situation where now you have to host this show. And obviously all around you, you're going to have these production studios, you're going to have these massive teams, you're going to have other late night show hosts. You do not want to mess up. You do not want to rock the boat because you've been given this opportunity. And I feel like Trevor Noah was thrown out of the frying pan into the fire. I think that's the expression. I feel like he was just thrown into that situation, and obviously I would personally believe that he is just conforming because it's what everyone else is doing, and he doesn't want to be the guy who gets called out, which frankly I wish he wouldn't. Because South Africa is a country where there's a lot of racial tensions, a lot of racial issues. And even Trevor Noah himself said, we got to laugh about it. When we end up in these horrible situations, we got to laugh about it. We got to make jokes about it because it helps us cope. But at the same time, I also wonder, I was going through some of his old stand-ups, and I could see how a lot of his jokes about the president and the politicians in South Africa, I realized they could be construed. I could see that how they might be the same as the jokes he tells now. about Trump, and I'm just biased the other way. But I think it is worth noting that Trevor Noah, I think he is an individualist. If I'm analysing one of his jokes, he was talking about these guys who say that they are not. This was in South Africa. He was talking about how there's these guys who say they wouldn't date a black girl, and he was just going on about how they're saying, oh, black girls aren't very pretty, and Trevor Noah says that. Oh yeah, no, I've missed the context there. Trevor Noah was going on a rant about I believe it was in Cape Town. They did a poll for the most beautiful race, and I believe the white people won that poll because everyone voted for themselves except for half the coloured people. This is just based on Trevor Noah's rant/joke, and he said that there is no beautiful race because there's a lot of beautiful white women, there's a lot of beautiful black women, there's a lot of beautiful all sorts of women, and he was just saying that each person is different, that you can't just go and evaluate a whole race on one thing like that because each person is different and there's lots of different types of people. So I felt like that was a very individualistic sentiment, and maybe that makes him individualist, but maybe he was just making a joke, or maybe he's got his own opinions, but who knows. He does go on later on to evaluate the different types of body parts of each race, saying that like certain people have great legs and so on, but technically that invalidates his previous claim, but maybe. The other little thing I wanted to talk about, this is something I want to do a lot of research into this. I want to compile a report, and it's a sort of subtle censorship that goes on, because obviously we're aware of the obvious censorship, when Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, they ban people, block people, demonetize them, they do all this obvious stuff, and you're like, I can see this happening. Now, we've seen the shadow banning that goes on some sites, but there's some other little things that go on, and they're a bit difficult to notice. Now, I first noticed this when I was going on to, I think I was chatting with someone on WhatsApp, and I wanted to send them a GIF, and I knew it was definitely not a politically correct GIF, but I knew it was on there because WhatsApp uses a service called Tenor, however you want to pronounce that. So I knew that GIF was on there because I'd been on the Tenor on the website. But here's the thing: when I searched for the keyword, that GIF wasn't found. So I tried a few other keywords, and I noticed that I wasn't finding any results. And what I realized was, when you're searching on Tenor, and I believe Giphy does the same thing as well, it will just ignore certain keywords that you type in. I believe the word I tried was retard, but I tried it with other things too. I tried to see what types of GIFs would be omitted. Like I noticed that if you typed in things like Nazi, you would only see certain types of GIFs that I like. I think there was a few GIFs from 4chan that I know on Tenor and Giphy as well. There's a few GIFs from 4chan that are very tongue-in-cheek pro-Nazi. And I just found it crazy that they were just blocking out these GIFs like that, because you wouldn't notice it, but that certainly would have an effect on people, because that kind of it's shifting the conversation that people are having, because you use GIFs to kind of communicate you to express your feelings, your emotions, and so on. So I found that a bit ridiculous. Another little bit of soft censorship that goes on. It's a bit of a brief one. You've probably noticed it before, and it is a bit easier to notice. And that is when Facebook flags up certain websites as harmful. Now that makes sense, certainly, if a website is harmful. But what if, say, it's a fairly well-established site? What if, say, it's a competitor to Facebook? Now, I noticed when I tried to share to someone I know, I tried to share minds.com, because this person likes to post on Facebook, but they're worried that Facebook would censor them. So I said, okay, well, why don't you check out minds.com? Went to click post, and it says, originally it used to tell me it's actually funny because it shifted. When I tried to post, it said this message cannot be posted because it contains harmful content, a link to a harmful website, so on. But a few months ago, I tried to post minds.com to someone else, and I didn't get that message. No, this further back, I got could not send message. Please try again. Now that's more suspicious because that's not telling you, oh, this is a harmful website. That's just literally just blocking what you just wrote in, preventing you from sending the message. I ended up having to write it by hand, and then I sent a picture to the person to show them that Facebook was blocking me trying to send my messages. Anyway, if you happen to come across any other websites that do this kind of thing, where you notice this kind of subtle censorship, where they just kind of shift and nudge what you see, and we're really aware of the algorithms that go on YouTube. I don't really mind that so much because that's not between people. It's more these private communications where you actually talk to a particular person or group of people. That's why I find it a little more suspect, because I can't send a link to someone. I can't send a specific GIF that I know the GIF and I know it's on that site and I know it's on that service, but no, it's blocked. So if you happen to know of any GIFs, let me know. I'll be posting the links to that article about the mothers who were shocked by their daughters coming home and with moustaches and all that. And I'll post a link to the Isle of Man Education Bill, or an article about it. And I'll also post links to the conversation between Tree of Life and Sargon. And I'll post links to the whole thing about the coal miners and Mary Poppins. And yeah, so I reckon that's everything for me. I'll have another video up next week talking about more stuff. And I'm hoping with it before next week to have another video up just discussing this project I'm working on. I'm working on this brief project to help people figure out how well their representatives in Parliament are representing the constituencies. And I also want to kind of raise a discussion about whether the members of Parliament, the MPs, are they supposed to represent their voters, are they supposed to represent their parties, or are they supposed to represent the constituents? That's sort of the question I've got to ask. Because there was an alarming amount during Brexit who've voted opposite to what their constituencies voted. And that is not very representative. Anyway, so I'm building this whole map and app thing, and I'm using data from the National Statistics, official National Statistics website and all sorts, and I'll go over that later. It might get quite technical, but hopefully it might help people who are interested in helping with that kind of thing, or building that kind of thing themselves. Anyway, that's all from me. Till next time.